Hello and welcome to this week's episode of the podcast. My name is Bella and we're here for another week, which is very exciting. I've realised I've changed the intro of the podcast unintentionally. It's meant to be hello and welcome to this week's episode of You've Got Mail. I'm sorry. Let's just, rewind for a second. Hello and welcome to this week's episode of You've Got Mail. My name is Bella and we're here for another week, which is very exciting because we are 4 days away. People from Christmas, are we? Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. Yeah, I'd say 4. I'd say 4 if we're not counting today or Thursday, and that is fine if we are, because we're close enough already, and I'm finally home for Christmas, which honestly feels so lovely. I think coming away from Manchester and having that little break came at the exact perfect point. Like, I was really starting to need it. It started to feel like I was, getting a bit sick of the city. I love the city. It's loads of fun to live in. It's really fun around Christmas time, but when you just start to feel a little bit like, okay, I feel like we've done the city now. I feel like I've had my moment. I'm just going to move back because I'm not comfortable. And I just started to feel like I was ready to leave. And I feel like as soon as you feel like you're starting to be ready to leave, then you're instantly ready to leave. There's no wiggle room. It was like, okay, I'm ready to go now. I'm ready to be able to see trees and be at home and just have my own space for a little bit, because moving into a new house, yeah, lovely. But I'm also very used to having my own space and having my own time and kind of spending more time on my own. And I think coming home made me realise that it's important to still do that. It's important to make sure that you're giving yourself that space to have that alone time, especially when you move in newly with a partner. I feel like you get really excited, and so you want to do absolutely everything together because you're not used to not spending that time together and you're not used to having that option all of the time. But the thing is that time with yourself is really important too. That time with yourself, is important to prioritize, because it's how you recharge your battery and it's how you look forward to spending time with each other again. It's important to keep making effort, because I think if you're spending all of your time with each other, your standards of what you how you want to spend your time with each other drop, because you just start to become quite mundane. It starts to become the norm, the status quo, and so it doesn't become something special. And that's why spending time on your own is important. And so I'm home for the next 10 days. I leave 30th, I think. I don't want to travel on New Year's Eve again, because the last time I did that was a little bit stressful, I can't lie. I really didn't enjoy. Last time I feel like I didn't have that much time off for Christmas. I had 1 week, which was actually really not that much time at all, and so I feel much better about having a longer period of time. This time I'm off for 10 days. Such a lovely break. It's also, I think in the corporate world, Christmas is one of the best holidays, because you're not coming back to a horrific inbox because everyone else is off too. And so the workload isn't loads. I definitely know when I've come back off annual leave beforehand, I've been a bit like, it's coming. And I check my emails and there's 200 emails and I'm like, oh my God, what's happening? Whereas now I know I'm going to go back and everyone's in the same boat. And so everyone's going to be catching up on the first day. And there just feels like there's more wiggle room, And so I think this is why this is a particularly nice holiday if you work in corporate. If you work in the corporate world. I appreciate for other industries it is not quite the same. Also, I got my nails done. This is a big, important update. I know I've come full circle with this, and I think it's all I talk about on the podcast at the moment is how I think I want to get my nails done, but it's too expensive and I can't afford it, but it makes me feel good about myself, and then it makes me feel happy, and I'm full circle moment all the time, thinking I don't really know what to do. But actually, it's made me feel great. And the amount of time I've spent being they just look so good. I'm going to do a close-up after I've recorded the podcast, but I'm nervous to come in because I think it's going to affect the focusing. But I'll show you guys in a second, a full close-up, because they did them so well. And I'm obsessed. I'm really obsessed. And so it's been a great day at home so far. Yesterday, I finished work. I got my nails done. I came back. I sang karaoke for ages in the living room. So much fun. Watched Daddy's Home. I think the Daddy's Home films, underrated Christmas films. And I think maybe saying it's a Christmas film is a bit... But Daddy's Home 2 is a definite Christmas film. That actually is a Christmas film. And so I feel like you can say they're Christmas films. I feel like that is actually okay. Great films, would definitely recommend watching them. Then today, I woke up. I couldn't get to sleep last night, and I don't know why. And I had a really... you start to panic. It got to 2 a.m. and I was like, oh my God, I'm still awake. This is really stressful. I should definitely be asleep by now. And then I realised I was sleeping on 4 pillows, and I wonder it wasn't comfortable. And I think I'm used to sleeping next to my boyfriend, and so it's kind of weird not just sleeping on my own in the bed. Weird, do you know what I mean? It's weird how quickly you get used to a new normal. I think that's the thing that this has shown me, how my old has become something abnormal, and now I'm not used to it anymore. But anyway, today, recorded the podcast, going for a little run, and then later on I think I'm going to go to the pub, and I'm just really enjoying being home. And so it's a perfect time to come back, have a bit of a reset, and just have a moment and work out, okay, what's going well, what isn't going right. And so I can go back to Manchester with kind of a fresh head, with a fresh idea about how I want my time in Manchester to be, because I think coming away really allows you to like regroup. And every time that I've left Manchester before, whether it's been like, I only moved August, we then went on holiday in September and October. And then it's only really been 2 months of like solidly living there. And it's been really fun. I'm having a great time. But I've realised that I want to start spending more time doing things that aren't always drinking related. And I know that's typical coming into the new year. I know that's an unoriginal January thought. But I think we all know like the Christmas period, it's a lot of boozing and it's a lot of drinking. And I think I'm just feeling a bit like I need one of those weekend days to be a fun day. I need one of those weekend days to be something where I can do activities that I really enjoy, or I can do stuff that isn't work related and makes me feel like I'm still having a life that isn't work related, And I think my January, rather than doing like dry Jan, because I'm just not going to do that. I tried it last year, it didn't work, and I just got annoyed at myself for setting that challenge. Rather than doing dry Jan, I'm going to try and do one night each weekend where I don't drink. Not, and I don't mean Sunday, I mean like the Friday night or the Saturday night. The nights where like you have a full day afterwards to do something. And so I have a day of like feeling fresh. And I know that sounds like bad that I don't. But sometimes even if I only have 1 or 2 glasses of wine, I don't feel the freshest the next day. And I think I don't sleep very well. And I did this one weekend recently and I just had the most lovely Sunday. Woke up, went to the gym, made a nice breakfast, I just felt really like I had time to do everything and not super rushed. And so I'm taking that forward into the new year, into January. And I've been thinking about other New Year's resolutions and we're going to brainstorm them in the next episode, because I'm feeling like this year it's going to be a little bit different, my New Year's resolutions. And I think I need to give myself time to actually think them through, to think really what I want to do, But first off, before we get into the content of this week's episode, I just wanted to say thank you for listening to the podcast and for following me on Instagram, to follow me on the social medias, and for, being a part of You've Got Mail. When I think back to what You've Got Mail started as, and I think about like the growth period that it's been hard this year to keep it going at points, and I wasn't sure if it was something that I wanted to do, and I wasn't sure if it was something. It was always something I still felt passionate about, but balancing like full-time work and an actual side hobby, side hustle type thing, having those two things going on, it felt like a lot at the same time. And I just wasn't sure if this was, when you start to lose faith in yourself, you start to lose confidence in what you're doing. When you start to lose faith in what you're doing, you start to not feel super confident, you start overthinking. And I was feeling a bit unsure about it quite often. And so I didn't know where the podcast would be at the end of this year. But to say it's in like the best place that it's ever been at the end of this year is something that's really exciting. And it makes me really, really excited for the next year. And the places that I want the podcast to go and like the growth that it's had over the last year makes me think like what could happen next year. I wonder what stage we'd be at next year. I wonder where we'd really feel like we're going. Like I'm really excited to see where You've Got Mail will be at this point next year. And so I just wanted to say thank you for listening. Thank you for being on the last year with me. Thank you for, moving from London to Manchester with me, accompanying me on all of the last 52 weeks. It's kind of crazy, isn't it? I feel like we've had a catch-up chat every single day. I talk to you lots more than I talk to some of my family, okay? And that is an issue, but it's sometimes hard to fit everything in. And so, yeah. I just wanted to say thank you for listening. But anyway, on to the content part of this week's episode. And this week we are talking about Christmas traditions and Christmas as we get older, because I think it's something that a lot of us, well, maybe not a lot of us struggle with, but I struggle with. And I definitely felt growing up there was this weird transition period of what Christmas meant. And I really struggled with like the magic of Christmas and growing up and seeing Christmas as an adult and what did that really mean? And how could I incorporate the traditions that were so important to me when I was younger into like the new Christmas spirit? And first disclaimer, like I'm not a religious person. I don't feel like I'm religious. I'm spiritual. I think there's something else out there. I don't think it's just us. I believe that there's, something bigger than us, but I wouldn't say that I'm a Christian. And so Christmas for me is like, I know it sounds weird that we still celebrate it as a holiday if you're not religious, because it is such a like key religious like story. And I think when you're in the UK, Christmas is a massive big deal here. Even if you aren't religious, like everyone's like Father Christmas, Santa, that type of thing. It's big everywhere. That no matter like your standpoint on the religious side of it, Christmas is a special time. And I think the thing that makes it so special for me now as an adult coming to Christmas is it's one of the periods of leave that I have that I'll just use to solely come home. I won't be doing anything for the next 10 days. I've got 10 days off work. I will just be at home seeing my family and my friends, and I won't travel and I won't go away. And I think to have that focus on your family, to have that like family time experience, like as you get older, you realize how much busier life gets and how much harder it is to fit absolutely everything in, how much harder it is to see everyone, and how much you really have to prioritize making effort to see the ones that you love, even though it feels like it should be really easy, even though it feels like it should just be something that's, not too serious, not too much. You're just going to ring, text, and blah, blah, blah. It'll all be sorted. It's not, everyone has so much going on in their lives. And so coming home for this like period here, and knowing that I'm going to see my family, and knowing that we're going to see each other, and we're going to be able to spend quality time with each other, and you're going to be able to have that moment, I think is really important. And it's something that I really look forward to as in the run up in winter, because I think we all know that like winter's a bit miserable. It's not the most fun month, is it? It's definitely not the most fun season. I used to say it was my favourite season. I think that's just because I used to love snow. But the sad thing is that it hasn't snowed here in ages, and that is global warming. But it used to be thick, thick snow. And when I think back to like going to school, there'd be times where I'd get stuck at school and I'd have to stay overnight because we wouldn't be able to get home. Now, it was a boarding school, so this made it much more acceptable than like just having to stay in the classrooms. But we used to have to stay over because the bus couldn't travel back home. And there was like a good 3 years where in like the winter months, I would pack a separate bag in my rucksack of like overnight clothes in case I got stuck there, because one time I didn't do this and we got stuck there and it was a nightmare and I was not happy. The main thing about Christmas is seeing your family and coming home and spending time with each other. And I think now and every time I come home for Christmas, it becomes this like quite like a like reflective moment, I think about how many different versions of me there've been here, how many chapters this room has seen me grow up in, because like we moved to this house when I was 14. How old am I now? 24. Okay. We're coming on our 10-year anniversary. Okay. It's our 10-year anniversary, me in this room. And it's really seen me through many, many chapters. The amount of growth that you see between 14 and 24 is crazy. It's really weird to think that like 6 and 16 had the same as 14 to 24. That's kind of disgusting. That makes me feel a little bit old. But I feel happy in the place that I'm at now, I feel weirdly settled and kind of like I know what I'm doing. I have a plan. I'm content in my plan. I know the plan that I'm working towards. And it's not like a strict plan of I know what I'm doing, but it's more of a plan of I know the type of life that I want to have. And I'm starting to learn about what is important to me. And I think that is something that like 24, I feel grateful to kind of have that bit of an inner confidence, I'm starting to know how to stand up for myself. I'm starting to know what I truly believe in, starting to know the life that I want to create for myself. And I'm starting to know the type of life that I think I deserve. And when I think about all the versions of me that were here, like she had a lot of growing up to do. It's like when I started the podcast, I thought I knew everything. I thought I was a grown up and I thought I had everything sorted. And I really thought all of these big experiences and emotions that I felt like I was having, I thought that was the oldest I was ever going to feel. And now I remember things like diary, like if I look back in that journal over there, mortifying. Because I think when you're younger, you really think you know absolutely everything because you have this naivety. And I wonder if it's linked to being at school, being in the school environment, and having a very, very, stable routine. Or I had a very stable routine from the ages of like 13 to 18. I went to the same school, caught the same bus every single morning, got home at a similar time, had the same amount of work to do, worked my Saturday job. Like this routine, it became like big fish, small pond, because you know exactly what you're doing and you get very comfortable in what you're doing. And so you think you know everything. You think you're an adult. You think you've experienced everything. And then all of a sudden you're placed in new experiences and you realize you actually knew nothing. You realize that those experiences that you had there are not very applicable to these experiences that you had here. And you need to be so much more kind of open-minded to the different experiences that you're going to have. And you realize how naive you were to the world around you. And I think this is why I kind of love coming home, because I love seeing like the different versions of me that are here each time, and how much more understanding of the person that I want to be I become each time that I come home. Each time I visit home, I feel so much stronger in kind of like the life I want to become, when I can feel myself like flourishing in confidence, which is a really nice thing, because I used to be really shy and I used to hate having attention on me. I absolutely used to hate it. Like, it used to be the worst thing in the entire world. And it's not to say I don't get anxious anymore. I do. We all know this. And therapy's been a massive helper for that. But I feel like I hold my head up high now when I walk down the street. And it's like little things like that seem really silly. But I used to really just hate having people's attention on me. I used to really hate being the centre of attention. And now I have the podcast and the TikTok, and, you know, it's not because I want to be the centre of attention, but it's because I'm not afraid to show up. I'm not afraid to be known anymore. And I think that was it. It wasn't that I was afraid to be the centre of attention, but I was afraid to be known. I was afraid to kind of feel people appreciating who I am. And I wonder if I was like scared of letting people down. I was kind of felt like if I didn't take up space, and like I couldn't let them down in a weird way. Like, they couldn't be disappointed with who I was because I was so unconfident in the person that I was. And I think we all think that confidence is something that happens overnight, and it's something that, you know, is very easy to solve. But actually, confidence takes time. It takes time to be putting yourself in new situations where you start to feel like you get to know yourself a bit more. Like, it takes time to put yourself in situations that are new, because it's in putting yourself in those situations that you get to know yourself more, and you get to understand who you're becoming, and you get to understand who you want to grow into. And those new situations are important, because it's in those new situations that you grow. You get to trial out that personal growth that you've been talking about for so long and working on for so long. And I think this is why I am glad that I did leave home, is because it gave me those opportunities to grow into a person that I always wanted to become, because it gave me the new opportunities that I needed to have to learn. Because it was through those new opportunities that I did learn. I learned how different people treated me. I learned, you know, I made mistakes. I failed at things. And I really like the TikTok trend at the moment. It's like my museum of failures, because there's so many things that I've done that haven't worked out, that didn't go to plan, that didn't end how I thought they were going to end, but I tried. And I think I learned a lot through those failures. And I learned, like, there's been failures with the podcast. There's been issues that I've had the entire, like, you know, it's never been this smooth sailing. It's never been a perfect ride. And in a way, I'm grateful for that, because I think the slow growth that the podcast has had, and this kind of like gentle ride and kind of like learning who I am and who I want to be, has allowed myself, and it's given me like the grace to, it's given me the time to let that flow gracefully. You know, it's not like I recorded the first podcast and all of a sudden everyone was absolutely obsessed, and, you know, I was 19 years old speaking to millions of people. No, that didn't happen. But I'm glad that didn't happen, because there's been so much more learning over the past 4 years about things that I want to talk about things that I want to share, about how to express myself, about the type of content that I want to produce. And I think this slow growth of who we want to become is important, because so many things about the world that we're living in now mean that instant fame and instant success is unlikely but achievable. I say unlikely because, you know, I feel like it's a very small percentage of creators that get big straight away. But that is possible, but I think it's not the majority of creators that get big straight away. But there must be a danger in getting big straight away, because you don't learn what your boundaries are. You have to learn what your boundaries are whilst you're already massive, which means you're going to kind of move past those boundaries before realising it was a boundary, and you're going to have to learn the hard way. Whereas I feel grateful that mine's kind of been slower, because it's allowed me to learn what my boundaries are when I didn't really have an audience, you know, when there wasn't really anyone listening but my mum and my boyfriend. And this is why you should never be scared to kind of like show up as you are and to do what you want to do and show your face and take up your existence, because in order for you to get somewhere that's like up here, you have to start somewhere here. But starting here is important, because you make your mistakes without, you know, so much pressure on you. And it's not that when you make up mistakes up here that it's such a terrible experience. It's not, you know. People don't care as much as you think they do. People are way more bothered about their own lives than your life. It took me ages to realise that. I really thought people cared about mine so much more than they cared about theirs. I had such a main character complex for so long. Like, a ridiculous main character complex. I used to think that everyone was like judging me and thinking about me, and like, it was awful. It would ruin everything that I did. And now I've realised I will only ever be a 2-second conversation. If that. if that, I will only ever be a 2-second conversation. And so it's so much better to show my face and do something that's embarrassing or cringe or take up space and have an existence that I'm proud of and is something that I want to do and risk being judged than not do anything just for the sake of a 2-second conversation. Because that's pointless. Because people are always going to talk about you whether you like it or not. And so may as well give them something to talk about, you know? And so I think about each Christmas time I get very reflective, very look at this person that I've become. And each time that I first set foot in my bedroom, I'm like, oh, it's like meeting an old friend, you know? All the little things that I left in the room that I didn't think were important but are really sentimental. It's like coming into my own private museum. Sounds weird, but I feel very sentimental about every item that is in here. And I just wanted you to, kind of this Christmas time, take stock of how far you've come this year. You know, think about all of the big things that you've been through, think about how much you've grown, and think about how in the new year you could take up more space. You know, what's that thing that you're afraid to do and afraid to be judged? Because I think the biggest thing that times gives you is this ability to take up space and have that confidence and really grow into the person that you want to become. But in order to do that, you have to start doing the thing that you're so scared to do. Start the podcast, create the social media, and realise that slow growth isn't bad. Don't be so nervous of starting something that you don't start. Don't be so nervous of failing at something that you don't begin. Because you'll never know if you don't try. And also, if you don't try, you'll never get to learn and grow from it. And you'll never become to that standard that you really want to become. So please, in the new year, start the thing that you're so scared about starting. Know when it's something that's really important to you. And I know this is something that's really important to you. And so I just don't want you to have lived your life and not done it. You know? I don't want that for you. But anyway, on to the question part of this week's podcast. And we've got the iPad back. She's thriving. Okay, questions. I just turned 21 and I'm very afraid of using my loo. I'm sorry. I just turned 21 and I'm very afraid of using my loo. I just turned 21 and I'm very afraid of losing my youth. What's your best tips on not growing up too quickly? I think we grow up too quickly when we start thinking that we're really old. This is quite a good episode for this. I think the moments where I felt like I grew up too quickly was when I thought I was really old and I thought I was an adult and I thought I knew what I was doing. Now I feel like I'm growing up at more of a staggered rate because I'm very aware that I'm just 24. I was going to say 21, 24. I'm very aware of my age and I'm very aware of like the person that I'm becoming and the person that I'm growing into. And I'm very aware that I have so much learning still to do. And so I think you don't grow up too quickly when you're not naive to how much growing there is left to do. When you're open-minded to how much you've got left to learn, when you're really like onboarding how much living there is still to do. You're not losing your youth at 21. I think you've got to remember these societal standards that we have placed on different ages, they're quite archaic now. The reality is that for our grandparents' parents, 30 was older because 60 was old, okay? Reaching 80 was a massive milestone, whereas now so many people are reaching 80. 60 is middle age, you know? I feel like 30 is becoming the new 20s because as our lives, you've got to think our lifespan used to be this, and now the lifespan is this. And so your youth has been extended now because you are likely to have so much more of an extended life and quality of life. And so I think the big part for me that I'm realising as I'm getting older is that I don't want to wish any of this time away. Because we are getting older. We are getting older, but I don't want to be scared about getting older. I want to try and stay in the present. And so the thing I would tell you is really try and stay in the present as much as you can, because that is the only thing that is going to make this feel like it's not going too quickly, is really focusing on the now. Thinking about how you're getting older constantly will end up making this experience fly by, because that's what you'll be thinking about. How can I stop stressing out because it's finals week? Okay. My top tips for exam weeks are, and this is coming from someone who gets very stressed and has ADHD and so blows everything out of proportion sometimes and gets very worried about how much she has to do. First tip would be make sure you have a good sleeping pattern. Second tip would be make sure you have strong boundaries with work. Tell yourself you're doing 2 hours in the evening, or I don't know what you do, but give yourself that boundary. Make sure after each exam You take a break, you go for a walk, you go out for dinner, you do something that brings you joy, and you allow yourself to switch off in a way that is actually switching off. Don't scroll on your phone. That's not switching off. Sometimes you need to have a little rot moment on your phone, and I get that, but that isn't for this. You need to let your brain breathe. And sometimes I feel like scrolling on social media and like it's just too much noise. You need to go outside and have a moment. And remember, you've done all you can. You've worked so incredibly hard. You should be proud of yourself and confident in yourself. And also remember that these exams have they bear no relevance to you as a person and as a character. They're just a grade, okay? They're just a grade. You're a good person before the test, you'll be a good person after the test. Because I used to extrapolate my grade into how I felt about me as a person. And so if I got a bad grade, I thought I was a bad person. And that was a very toxic association to make because it was never the case, okay? And so make sure that you're not making that link, I think is really important. And then at the end of it all, make sure you have a massive celebration, however that could be, whether it's going out for dinner, whether it's going, I don't know, away for a day, whether it's going on a little day trip, whether it's doing something, I don't know, whatever it could be. Just make sure you're spending time really celebrating, which hopefully by the time you listen to this episode, it will be that. I'm getting the feeling as if I didn't belong where I'm currently at after my year exchange. Advice. I think it's really tricky to come back into an environment that we were in and we felt a certain way. We then left and became another person, and now we're having to go back to that original environment and we're feeling like we don't fit in because you're trying to fit into the environment that you had before, But you've changed and the people around you have changed. And so it's understandable that you're feeling a little bit comfortable. But remember, it doesn't mean that you didn't fit in there before. It just means that maybe now this environment is going to look a bit different, and that's okay. And the way I would try and see it that would help me is being like, okay, chapter 1 was like this, chapter 2 is when I was away, and chapter 3 is when I'm coming back to that same location, but it's going to be different. And I think it's the acknowledgement that this is going to be different, but that doesn't make it bad. I feel this way when we go back to university, like year 1, year 2, year 3, and you go back in the third year and you realise how different that experience was to your first year being there. How much you changed, how much, your day-to-day changed, how much your location changed, how much the chapter was different if you read them side by side, if you did a little comparison. And so that's what I want you to really focus on, is thinking it's okay that this isn't the same. It doesn't mean I don't belong here. It just means it's going to be different to that first chapter that I had. But also remember, if you're really feeling like you don't belong there, if you're really, really struggling, to make sure that you're talking to the people around you, talking to your friends, reaching out to your family, not isolating yourself, because that feeling of not belonging can really eat you up. That feeling of loneliness can really be something that becomes all consuming. And I don't want you to feel like you're alone with it, because you're not. Because I know you're going to have some people around you who really want to help you with that. And so, yeah, that's what I would suggest. And final question. How to make friends in your late 20s whilst living in a culture of loneliness, in brackets, America. I think this is something we're both going to do because I also want to make more friends and I'm in my mid-20s, but I feel like they still apply. I know it feels uncomfortable and I know we don't really want to do it. I don't really want to do it, but we're going to join some classes. Oh, I hate a class. I don't know what it is. It's the social pressure of a class. But the thing is, when you're in school, you're in this constant friendship group, okay? Constant. And you're constantly surrounded by different people and you're constantly surrounded by different people's interactions. And so you get very used to being able to make friends easily because you're in these 4 social groups. Whereas now we're not in that anymore. The only one we're in is work. And a lot of us go to the gym, but we're not in a class there, or we might go and do sports outside. We don't do these community sports as much anymore. And so these groups are like pockets of people where we're able to socialize in. It's often work. Okay, and you need friends outside of work too. You cannot just have all of your friends in the same area. I mean, some people might be able to, but I think it's important to have that variety. And unless you made friends at university or like other periods of your life that you carried through, you might not have friends in the current situation that you're at now. I know, like, I don't have loads of friends that I've carried through from each of the chapters. I have select people, but I don't have these massive friendship groups that some friendships have. And so I want to try and find a few more in Manchester. And so I'm going to try and go as much as I won't hate it. It's just the idea of it being like a forced social thing makes me really nervous. But I know that it's a great way to meet people. And I know I just have to get over myself and I'll actually have a really good time. And so how to make friends in your late 20s is putting yourself out there. It's going to the run club or the book club. It's going to those. There's so many different communities now that help people meet up, that help people make friends. It's going to those things, you know, it's realizing that you're not on your own in all of this and that you can find people out there, because if there's anything this podcast has taught me, it's how much more similar we all are than we think. And so we're both going to have to put ourselves out there, but I really don't want to, but we're going to have to, and it'll be fine. But anyway, on to the new things that I've done this week. New things I've done, got my nails done. I can't wait to show you. I'm obsessed. I don't know why I didn't get these done sooner. Honestly, I feel like a new woman. I feel so put together. I feel classy. That's how I feel, and I think that's a great way. I think that's a really great way to feel, to be honest. I think that's my favourite type of feeling. I've got a few new books. I've got The Rosy Result, Catcher in the Rye, and another one. And so I'm going to be reading a little bit more this week, I'm hopeful. But honestly, new things I've done this week has been getting through it. You know, finishing up. I think also the finishing up of any job, you know, finishing up for annual leave takes a long amount of time. And because I've finished, I did a bit of a silly thing and finished at like 11 o'clock on a Friday, which normally when you finish on a Thursday, let's say you just work until it's done. You just work until you can clock out and then you're fine. Whereas this, I had to finish at 5 because I was 6 because I was catching my train. And so I couldn't do that. And so it's been a little bit busy this week. But I went out to Blue's Kitchen on Tuesday and I had spicy margaritas and they were delicious. I love a spicy margarita. I'm going to go make one after this, I've decided. What else have I done this week? On Monday, I got my hair cut. I wasn't sure about it initially, but I think I do really like it now. I think it's really growing on me. I'm going to go touch it up because I think we're going to go to the pub. I really fancy going to the pub, I can't lie. There's so many old pubs in Scarborough and I'm definitely for that right now. I love a pub at Christmas. It feels so cozy. But anyway, I need to go because I need to edit this before we're meant to go to the pub. And that is meant to be in 20 minutes. And this is currently a half-hour long episode. But I just wanted to say, I hope you have a lovely Christmas period. If you're celebrating, restful period. If you're not, if you have time off, I just hope you enjoy yourself. And I can't wait to speak to you again next week. I love you. Thank you for listening. And I'll speak to you again next week. Bye.